Welcome in to the Rockies Insider. I'm your Rockies Insider, Patrick Lyons. On this emergency edition, not emergency that it's the day of the 2025 MLB Draft or that the Rockies selected a very talented player with the 4th overall pick, as we knew they would. But they have selected out of Stillwater High School, Oklahoma, 18-year-old shortstop Ethan Holliday, son of Rockies legend Matt Holliday, brother of Baltimore Orioles second baseman Jackson Holliday. The best player by many accounts, by many of the folks who make their money dealing with prospects and amateur players, high school, college alike. They had Ethan Holliday as being the best in this group. And somehow, with a good $2 million, less than the Washington Nationals had with the first overall pick, the Rockies get their guy. They get Ethan Holliday, the guy that has a bloodline, that has a tie with this organization. If you follow the Rockies on social media, you've seen a couple photographs of a young Ethan Holliday at Coors Field, not just the young one that was at Coors Field last summer when Jackson Holliday came as a member of the Baltimore Orioles and Matt was there and Ethan was there. And I specifically asked him about playing at Coors Field and how nice of a facility it is. And he raved about it. He thought, Coors Field was just absolutely beautiful. Surprised it was the 3rd oldest ballpark still in the National League. But not even those photos of him when he was younger. He's still a kid, but still photographs from when he was almost months old back in 2007, 2008. And now he is going to be a member of the Colorado Rockies. Has not signed his deal. We don't know what number he's going to get as his signing bonus, but nevertheless, speaking with him and speaking with Matt, as several members of the Denver media did who cover the Colorado Rockies, doesn't sound like there's going to be any issue coming to an agreement about how much his signing bonus will be. Rockies had a slot value of $8.77 million. Could it end up being more than that? Yeah, absolutely. But the Rockies have arguably the best player in this year's draft, Ethan Holliday. Felix in the chat. They did it. Yeah, they got the guy. They got their guy. Last year, I think there was a few guys. Charlie Condon certainly was the best bat, I think, overall. He was the Golden Spikes Award winner for 2024. And so he fell to 3rd spot. Not totally shocking or surprising, but you don't just have a great raw high school talent in Ethan Holliday. You have a guy with ties to this organization who has been to Coors Field, who has been inside the Rockies clubhouse many times, who in 2018, when Matt Holliday came back to finish his career in the majors with the Rockies at about 10 years old, he was taking batting practice at Coors Field. That's something he remembers. That's absolutely something that he remembers. He said exactly that on the Zoom call, talking with him for a good 20 plus minutes about a wide range of topics that I do want to get to here. If you've got a question, make sure you drop it in on the chat on YouTube. If you're listening to this after the fact, audio, this emergency edition, you can still leave a comment on the video over on YouTube, and I get back to 100% of those. So no doubt about that. First overall pick for the Nationals, they actually went with a player who is also a shortstop, is also a high school player, is also from Oklahoma, and whose father was also a big leaguer, Eli Willits, also from Oklahoma. He goes first overall, son of Reggie Willits. And this was a player who reclassified, who, a lot like Bryce Harper, was able to get into the draft a year earlier than he would have been naturally. So he goes, and he's the youngest player in this year's draft, just 17 years old. So he goes with the first overall pick, and Ethan was specifically asked about his relationship with Eli, and he's excited. He's ecstatic for Eli. He knows him very well. Their high schools weren't that far apart. And so in the off season, look, there's 365 days a year, and you've got another really great talent from the state of Oklahoma, a state that Ethan is proud to come from. His father is proud to come from there. Even his grandfather has a history. There's a lot of Holliday heritage in the state of Oklahoma. So Ethan very excited for Eli. That's awesome that these two guys can share that experience. At pick number 2, it was Tyler Bremner from the University of California, Santa Barbara. He is a right-handed starting pitcher that going into this year's draft was one of those players that was thought to potentially go 1-1. He was sort of this year's Chase Dollander, where going into the year, he was going to be that guy. And then he was just good. But the Angels like him a lot. They selected him at number 2. Maybe he'll get a little bit under slot. Maybe he's a player that the Angels, and this is how the Angels think, maybe he's a player that the Angels feel could help them on the big league roster this year. It's been really unprecedented the way the Angels have gone about drafting players and then immediately bringing them up to the majors almost immediately. So it'll be interesting to see how they proceed with Tyler Bremner, one of the stars of this year's College World Series. 6'2" lefty Cade Anderson from LSU goes to the 3rd pick by the Seattle Mariners. And number 4, he's there. They get it done. Ethan Holliday out of Stillwater, Oklahoma, becomes the Rockies' first high schooler selected in the first round since Benny Montgomery back in 2021, and their 15th high schooler taken all time with their first selection. Matt Holliday, drafted in, I want to say 1998, was taken 7th in the 7th round, believe it or not, out of high school. But there is that pedigree there. Jackson Holliday went first overall back in 2022. So they join a very small group of brothers who have been drafted in the first round, early in the first round. You might not be familiar with the name Delman and Dimitri Young. Dimitri Young, you should. I just talked about him 2 weeks ago. He is now the new manager of the Colorado Springs Sky Sox, formerly the Northern Colorado Owls. But Dimitri went 4th round in 1991, and then Delman was over a decade later. He had his issues on the field, off the field, was a huge prospect, drafted 1st overall, in fact, by the Tampa Bay Rays. Didn't have quite the same career as his brother Dimitri. Then the 2 brothers I think you do know quite well, both of which made a pretty solid impact in the major leagues. They also played together. Justin and BJ Upton. BJ went 2nd overall to the Rays in 2002, and Justin went 1st overall to the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2005. And now you've got 4th overall in 2025, 1st overall in 2022. Ethan to the Rockies, Jackson to the Baltimore Orioles. And it could be a while until we see them in action against one another. Spring training, they go to opposite directions. Cactus League for Ethan, Grapefruit League for Jackson. So we won't even see the lineup cards getting exchanged quite yet. Justin in the chat, welcome, buddy. I am happy for the Rockies draft. Yeah, this is one of the best scenarios that you could possibly have on draft day. In this year's draft, it was undoubtedly the best possible scenario. There's no one else that the Rockies could have taken that would do the numbers that it's going to on social media and in headlines, because this is a story that's about more than just Rockies get a really good player. Rockies get a player that in a different year wouldn't have been available to them. That is true. That is true about Ethan Holliday, but you've got the bloodlines, you've got the connection, you've got the relationship between Matt and the organization and Ethan Holliday being the guy that over a year ago, there were those conversations. There were those, not even rumblings, just rumor rumblings, right? Of, man, what if Ethan gets taken by the Rockies? Because we know they're going to have a really high draft pick next year. We didn't know the Rockies would have the 4th overall pick. We knew they would be towards the top. They were going to be a lottery team as they were heading towards another 100-loss campaign. And it seemed too good to be true that there was no way Ethan would be available to the Rockies with the 4th pick. And here he is, taken by the Rockies with the 4th pick. So it's just absolutely fantastic. Ethan is Gatorade's Player of the Year in the state of Oklahoma. These are Oklahoma numbers, but keep in mind, he plays in a tough division, and he's gone on the circuit, going around, playing all around the country. But he hit 661, 95 at bats, 58 base hits. Come on. A 2,000 OPS to go along with 19 homers, 64 RBI, 44 walks in his senior season. Baseball America had him as the best player in this year's draft. They had Charlie Condon as the best player in last year's draft. They had Brendan Rodgers as the best player in 2015 and John Gray the best in 2013. So 4 of the last, say, 13 drafts have managed to fall to the Rockies, despite the fact that the Rockies have not had to pick any higher than number 3 in any draft. They've never gone that high. No, that's not true. They drafted Greg Reynolds 2nd overall. What year was that? I'm pretty sure he was a 2nd overall pick. Yes, he was in 2006. Unfortunately, that did not work out very well. But Ethan Holliday, I think that does work out really great. And you do hope the Rockies can do more with their next selections, because it's not just one superstar player. Even if Ethan Holliday becomes an all-star, you can't do much with one all-star. You need multiple players to develop and do big things. And so the Rockies need to make sure that they do that. On day 1 here, with their 2nd pick, selection number 45 overall, they select 6-foot right-hander JB Middleton out of Southern Mississippi. He had some good games against one of the College World Series clubs that you saw in the final, Coastal Carolina. He pitched against them plenty of times while playing in the Sun Belt Conference. He did have a 2.31 ERA in 16 starts, 10-1 record. You love to see the 10-plus strikeouts per 9 by JB Middleton. Maybe more importantly, I've talked about this many times, the strikeout to walk ratio, only walked 25 in his 16 games started. So just under 5 strikeouts per walk for JB Middleton, the 21-year-old right-hander, the Rockies' 2nd pick. With their 3rd pick in the competitive balance round B at number 4, they go with Max Bellew out of the University of Texas, another outfielder. And I say another outfielder because that was who the Rockies selected last year with, I think that was also their 2nd pick. Well, Bellew is not their 2nd overall pick. It's their 3rd overall pick. But Bellew also coming out of the University of Texas at Austin, just like Jared Thompson did. He is a left-handed bat, just like Jared Thompson, does throw right-handed. He batted .303 with a 986 OPS for the Longhorns this past year. So Rockies grabbing another outfielder, 21 years old. He'll turn 22 this offseason. And then finally, they grab a 3rd baseman out of USC, another Ethan H. Ethan Hedges, who, according to MLB Pipeline, was ranked the 159th best player in this year's draft. Ethan Holliday, number 1, according to MLB Pipeline. He goes to the Rockies at number 4. JB Middleton, ranked 41st by MLB Pipeline. He goes 45th. Max Bellew, believe it or not, MLB Pipeline, I think, had him higher than just about any other publication. They had Bellew at 34. He goes to 74. And then Ethan Hedges, he's at 159. He gets drafted 77. We'll wait and see what happens with the money. Sometimes you have to drop down and draft a player lower than maybe where his slot would be, because you're going to sign that player for less than that slot value. And then you're going to use some of that money to give more or to give an overage over a slot value to someone that was drafted before that. So that very well could happen. Coach Gravy, I'm a little sleep deprived. Jared Thompson. Who is that? Exactly. Jared Thomas. Thank you for the correction. I do appreciate that. That does not bother me one bit, because I'm not catching myself. I'm not catching these mistakes as I'm too amped up getting ready for All-Star Week, this year's draft, a lot of other things. going on in the back burner. But Ethan Holliday had some interesting comments, had some interesting answers, was very gracious with his time. Him and Matt both answered questions. They were both very relaxed, both excited, gave, very long answers to those questions. Is he going to continue to be a shortstop? And, Ethan paid homage to Ezekiel Tovar, saying, yeah, he was the best shortstop in baseball, in the National League, at least last year. So there's right now pushing him off that position doesn't seem to be a possibility. With his larger body, Ethan Holliday might be better as a third baseman, but so much can happen between now and 5 years from now. Maybe when Ethan Holliday first comes up, he is a third baseman and Tovar is the shortstop. And then maybe something happens. Is there a trade? Is there an injury? And then Holliday moves back to shortstop. But what you're going to see in his first few seasons in the minors, if it's more than two, few means 3 or more, but in his first few seasons is a lot of shortstop, right? He can learn third base. He can learn a different position after it's determined that the position in which he plays, shortstop, is blocked by Ezekiel Tovar. So we have a long way to go until that happens. I kind of went in depth over on Blake Street Banner, talked with those guys on their YouTube channel. You should be able to listen to that podcast as well, as I was over there for about an hour and a half talking about the draft and seeing the selection of Ethan Holliday from so many different angles, because there's just a lot. So Ethan's been enjoying this process. I asked him how much he's thought about possibly making his pro debut. And that's not necessarily a decision that he's going to be able to make entirely on his own. The Rockies are going to make entirely on their own. I mean, he is their property, for lack of a better term, but Ethan Holliday wants to get started. He's ready to play pro ball. He's hitting in the cages and he's doing what he can there, and he's working on different things, but he is ready to get started. He's been dreaming about this for a very long time. So he wants to debut this year. I think maybe an Arizona Complex League debut is maybe more realistic. Maybe he plays the final week of the season with Loe Fresno to make his pro debut, but Ethan Holliday is ready to go. And you usually see position players, hitters, go out on assignment after getting drafted, more so than pitchers. A lot of those early round picks for pitchers, sometimes even later, they've been eaten up a lot for their college season. So they get shut down and they don't make their pro debut until later. That was the case with Chase Dollander. That was the case with Ryan Johnson for the Angels, who was drafted in 2024, got shut down. And then when time came for the opening day roster, he made the opening day roster and did not spend a day at that point in the minors. He has since gone back, but pitchers take a little bit of a break. Position players, you can go out and play a lot more regularly. I don't even want to say grind, because you're getting a nice break right now. So it's not going to feel like grinding. He really wants to get the career started. He does. I mentioned how, Ethan doesn't quite remember 2007, 2008, Matt's final 2 years with the team. 2018, he was there as a young guy, taking batting practice at 10 years old. 2024, last year, when Jackson came back, he didn't take any batting practice at Coors Field or anything like that. I specifically asked Matt about whether or not, he might join this organization, whether it is a coach on the major league side. Is it some kind of roving coordinator? Could he be a special assistant to the GM? There's any number of outcomes for the next step for Matt Holliday. Is it maybe better for him to keep an eye on both his boys in that way? Maybe. But as Matt said, look, I know his swing better than anybody, and I've worked with him a lot. He's worked with me more than any other coach. So I'm always going to have my hands on that. I'm always going to be involved, and I'm always going to be there. Whether it's as an employee of the Rockies, that sort of remains to be seen. We'll see how that ends up playing out. But that's another somewhat fun and an interesting angle and aspect of all of this. There was a lot that he got to. I may even have to go over and check my social media to find out what I post, because it's hard to remember. It's hard to remember everything that came across during that conversation, because I thought it was great. Again, really open, really honest. I asked Ethan about, the central fact that, his brother, first overall pick, he's in the majors. He makes the jump in the transition fairly well. You got his father, who's a legendary player, a 7-time All-Star. Is there pressure? Are there expectations? And he said, he said two things that were interesting. One was like, my dad and I, we've got this thing. He's done it before. I'm on my way to doing it. My brother, we've got this thing. We're very close. Jackson, unfortunately, wasn't able to be there for the draft pick. The plan was for him to be there, and it would have worked out if the Orioles game wasn't delayed multiple times. So he was late getting there. He may have even just landed. If you're watching this live, he probably just got in there in Oklahoma. Big hugs going all around. So there's that relationship that he has with his brother and his dad, and that's it. And he's got a whole support system of other Holliday family members that don't play baseball. So there isn't that pressure. But he did add that, when I was younger, there might have been that pressure, because as a young person growing up, you're trying to figure out who you are. Am I my dad? Am I my brother? Do I have to be those guys? And eventually you learn, no, I'm making my own path. I'm doing my own thing. I'm bigger than my brother, right? I've got more flexibility, more speed than my dad did. Same amount of power, but, more speed. I can play shortstop. He was an outfielder. So we're doing similar things, but we're also different. Philip asking, good to see you, buddy. Is there precedent for the Rockies to hire a prospect or player's father onto the staff? To my knowledge, that's never happened. And this would really be that exception, right? Like if it was Eli Willits that slipped to the Rockies at number 4, I don't think there would be any conversation or any question of, hey, Reggie, you're a former big leaguer. Are you going to join the coaching staff? It's just a little bit different with Matt Holliday, especially because he did accept a job with the St. Louis Cardinals a few years back before, after a very short amount of time, stepping away and realizing, no, I still need to look after my 2 boys. They still are making that transition. So we know he's got that pedigree. We know he wants to do that. He helps out as a volunteer assistant coach at the University of Oklahoma State University there. So he's got that. And so a lot of these things make sense. The Rockies right now don't have a manager. They've got an interim manager, but they don't have a manager. They're about, they may be getting a new general manager here very soon. So again, all of these things lining up, beg the question, could the Rockies be getting 2 for the price of 1? We'll kind of see, right? And we know the story in Colorado. We saw what Deion Sanders was able to do as the head coach and navigating his sons onto the roster and vice versa. That's not to say that Jackson Holliday is going to get called up and be on the opening day roster immediately after just being in high school less than a year prior. Matt Holliday is going to be the manager. No, none of those things are going to happen. Everyone's going to earn what's in line for them. There's still plenty of boxes that need to be checked, but could something like this come to fruition? Absolutely. It's not that crazy. So here we are on a day in which the Rockies finished the first half at 22-74. First team with 74 losses. In fact, first team with 73, but 74 losses, the most ever going into the All-Star break. And yet their draft pick is doing a lot of heavy lifting for them right now, because it's not just that they got their best player in this year's draft. It was that they got a player that has ties to this organization, whose family has ties with this organization, who has an incredibly talented father, an incredibly talented brother. And when you look to the future and say, someone or something needs to change course, and something different has to happen for this organization to change some of the stigma that rightfully surrounds this organization right now. Ethan Holliday feels like he could be one of those guys. Matt Holliday, with him, his pedigree, all of those things together gives you a lot more hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of the turnaround. And I've said this before, that potentially because of this selection of Ethan Holliday and the headlines that are going to come with it for the next few years, but right now, more importantly, let's talk about those headlines right now. Maybe that allows the front office, that allows Dick Monfort to feel a little bit more comfortable with the idea of trading more aggressively at the deadline instead of, well, we got to make at least one trade or two. And they're going to do that. But maybe they are more aggressive and they really clean house and they don't worry about how many more games they're going to lose after July 31st, because it's already in the cards that they are going to lose a historic amount of games, whether it's 122 for the record, if it's 121 to tie, or if it's 120 to win a second place trophy of the second worst season in baseball history in the modern era. Regardless, maybe now with some of the positivity that they have surrounding this year's draft pick with Ethan Holliday, maybe they just say, okay, we need more things like this. We need more young players. We need more prospects. We got to do things a little bit differently. And a lot of that can happen this offseason if they make some major moves in the front office. But what they can at least do over the next 2 weeks before the July 31st trade deadline, it's to trade more players than less. It's to get back more prospects, to be more creative, to be more willing to listen to offers on some of your better players, maybe even some of your younger players on this big league roster. And know that, okay, we're going to eat it a little bit on social media and in some articles and maybe in some headlines, but it's going to be followed by a lot more positive headlines with Ethan Holliday. And ultimately, they shouldn't be caring about headlines whatsoever. They should be focusing on improving this organization, this franchise, doing things differently. Too often they talk about how they have to do things differently because they play at altitude. No, there are some things they have to do differently because they're at altitude, but not everything has to be done differently because they're at altitude. Did they select the best player in this year's draft? Yes. Did that have anything to do with altitude? No. So maybe this is a start to something. It could be a very long time until the Rockies get themselves back to relevance. But right now, for one day, July 13th, on the MLB Draft, if you're really looking for the best story in the 2025 MLB Draft, the best story has to be Ethan Holliday, son of Matt Holliday and brother of Jackson Holliday, goes to the Colorado Rockies with the 4th overall pick. And now for the next 4 days during the All-Star break, you don't have to worry about hearing about another loss for the Rockies. So Rockies fans, you get that reprieve and you can feel good. You can get excited. You can start to dream about Ethan Holliday already in the chat, thinking about the future of what this roster might look like. Ethan Holliday at shortstop, Kyle Karros at third base. Maybe Kyle Karros is at first base and Ethan Holliday is at third base. Charlie Condon, maybe he's in a corner outfield spot. All of a sudden, you can look forward. You can start to dream and hope that maybe, just maybe, this is a turnaround. It can't possibly get worse. It can be as bad. It can be as bad, but it can't get any worse. And maybe, in fact, it is going to get better with the selection of Ethan Holliday, 4th overall. So that is a nice thing to end the first half on. It's a very nice thing to end the first half on. At Patrick D. Lyons, at Patrick D. Lyons, MLB. Hit me up on the social medias. You also got the Rockies Insider podcast. Leave a review. I would greatly appreciate that. Also, go over, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel so you can get more video content, see more action at the ballpark. And this week, we'll find out. Rockies do come back on Friday, 3 games against Minnesota, and then for 3 games against St. Louis starting next Monday, who, I should point out, do have Ethan Holliday's favorite player in the majors. That's right. He did say Nolan Arenado was his favorite player. Troy Tulowitzki was for a period of time, for a little while. He's still close with the family. But Nolan Arenado, Ethan Holliday's favorite player, is he going to show up on Friday or maybe Saturday? during the Twin series? Is he going to wait to hang out and say hello to Nolan Arenado? No, he's got a job to do now. He's ready to get his career started. He is no longer a high school kid looking up to Nolan Arenado. He is now a peer. He is now another Rockies draft pick, along with Nolan Arenado, and along with Troy Tulowitzki, and along with his father, Matt Holliday. So make sure you're subscribed to the Rockies Insider on YouTube, because you could see some one-on-one conversations. You could see some scrums with Ethan Holliday, with Matt Holliday there, talking about what it means to be a member of this organization, rocking a Rockies jersey, the Rockies cap, the interlocking CR. You can get all that content should he show up to the ballpark this week. I think he will. We'll find out. But you can only get that over on the Rockies Insider on YouTube. Appreciate everybody dropping by. Matthew, what's going on, buddy? He's hyped about the Rockies for the first time in a while. Yes, this is a time to get hyped. And yes, that hype's not going to last forever, because once the games start again, we'll see. Rockies have to start playing better at home, right? They've got to this weekend. Next weekend, Minnesota and St. Louis. It's got to change a little bit. We'll see. But regardless, there is a little bit of hype. There's something to feel good about. So appreciate everybody in the chat. Love the momentum you've provided me. But unfortunately, that kind of momentum, it's only as good as my next show. So, of course, I will be talking to you tomorrow.